Alright, so alongside the anime manga overviews, I've decided to create a new thing called the anime of the season. It's essentially going to be the same thing, just on a different title, just so I can put my favorite show of that season in a little series on its own, rather than have the usual top 10 that I've done for a while now with each season. So I know I'm really late to this, and that's because I've been really busy lately, especially with the Mahito video that I had to make, as well as some other things I had to take care of, but I'm still going to try to upload this regardless, even if it probably wouldn't get as much attraction as I would anticipate. So, the anime of the season for summer 2024 for me was Losing Heroines. It was a bit of a competition between this and Shoshomin series, though honestly there was also Alia into the whole mix, but as time went on, as I wrote in my community post, if you have seen that, I did think that that show got a bit weaker for reasons I explained in that community post. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. If you haven't watched the anime manga overview for the My Dress Up Darling series, the way that I do this is that I have a few notes here just to know where I'm going with this, but it's going to be more of a rambling freestyle kind of discussion on what my thoughts were on the series. It's not going to be as in-depth as I usually am with my other videos, and essentially to have more content in the channel, and it's more like an audio only type thing, because I'm pretty sure the footage on the video itself will just be a few still images and then kind of changing every few minutes. So yeah, Losing Heroines, what did I think about it and what made me like it so much? I really enjoy the themes that it explores in the series, and how it explores the essence of relationships and how short-term they can be, especially in high school, and how most of them are destined to break up. And this is shown in Nukumizu's monologue in the beginning of the series. But despite that short period, people still yearn for those experiences and interactions and still enjoy them regardless. And I think this is encapsulated perfectly in Komari's character arc, which we'll get into a bit later in the video. But in general, on the story itself, I really like how it is a unique take on romance, as essentially with most stories in general, when a character fails in their romance, that is where their character arc concludes. If not, maybe you get a few moments here and there after it to just sort of hammer down their conclusion of their story, essentially. But with this one, that failure is the start of this story, where essentially all our main three girls get rejected by their crush, and in different ways, and it also is utilized to explore different aspects of relationships as well as characterize each of the three girls in different ways. For better or worse for some of them, as it's not as in-depth for each of them. For example, Anna, which we'll get to in a sec, as she is essentially the least explored of the three with how the story was made, especially for season 1. And if we talk about Nukumizu, just before we get right into the meat of the series, I think he's a really good protagonist, especially with his dynamics with each of the girls, and I think that's what his selling point is. We see how he develops slowly over time as he starts to understand what a friend is, as he's basically established to be a loner. But what makes it interesting is that he's not an introvert, he's more of a loner by choice, similar to Ryo from Bocchi the Rock, for example, as I talked about in that video like a year ago or so, where Ryo was essentially a loner who is a loner by choice and can essentially interact socially but just doesn't want to do that, and that is exactly what Nukumizu is. We see this in how it's shown when he steps in for Komari to save her from her struggle in the student council meeting, and we see that he actually has a level of care for the girls, as he is worried about Anna and the rumors that were spread around, and he tries to tell her that they should not talk as much, but that is a flaw, as Anna herself is very annoyed by this because he's just kind of being selfish, and this is a reoccurring thing with Nukumizu, which is explored even further in the last few episodes of the story. And in terms of the other side characters, I mean, the most prominent side character that I'm sure everyone has mentioned or seen, it's going to be Shikiya, who is the blonde girl of the student council. And speaking of her, it really just makes me appreciate how good the voice acting is in this series, especially with Shikiya. I mean, the way she sounds and just the antics she gets to, it is just so fun to watch, and especially how she actually shows at the end that she has some level of care into helping Komari overcome her struggles, because we see in the council meeting, she assists Komari by introducing her for her, as she realizes that Komari was kind of losing herself and struggling to even talk there in the first place. And even the performance on Komari was just astounding. I mean, you just see and feel the emotions from that scene itself, and I just think it elevates the experience a lot more. I know I'm probably not explaining it that properly, but it is, if you just watch it and see it, you'll get what I mean. And there is different layers on the theme of relationships. For example, the pain of moving on, which is explored in the three characters in differing ways that kind of set them apart. Now, if we just first start with our main girl that was introduced in the beginning of the series, Ana Yanami, I did mention that I think she is the least explored of the main three, but she is honestly and quite easily the most entertaining one to watch, with how chaotic she can be with just her rants, and just overall how she is in general as a character. I mean, again, there might not be much for me to talk about with her, but that simplicity that she has is just insanely great to watch. Anytime she's on screen, you know it's gonna be something fun. And this also reminds me to just appreciate how well the show looks visually. Just the art style and just everything in terms of just visuals just looks so beautiful, and I just love it so much. But back to Anna, she may be the least explored of the main three, but that doesn't mean she lacks depth, as there are some things to talk about with her relationship to Nukumizu and overall how she is. For example, her relationship to Nukumizu is platonic, and I really appreciate that, because in most anime, you don't really get to see a platonic relationship between a guy and a girl. We have gotten that this season in Shoujo Min series, and I also did say that I really love that as well. And I guess you could also argue that technically even Lemon is a platonic relationship. Same with Komari, although there have been some implications with the finale in the 11th episode. But I do think that Anna and Nukumizu do highlight this the best, as they are the ones that interact the most, especially for most of the series until the end. And you also see that the relationship kind of develops further, as over time you can see that they get closer, and even after a while, Anna's the one that supports Nukumizu throughout his struggle in trying to figure out Komari's problem. And it is kind of a switcheroo, because for most of the series, it was Nukumizu who was sort of being a therapist for her and trying to help her out throughout her struggles, even though he was kind of roped into it. And the main thing, I guess, to talk about with Anna is the idea of her just sticking to her true decisions and choices. And we see this in how Hakamada, her crush, wants Anna to find somebody else she likes because he wants her to be happy. But Anna is very upset at this, but she believes that it's her choice whether or not she likes him, and that it is very selfish for him to say this, because who is he to know how much she likes him? And this is even further emphasized in how Anna believes that you just shouldn't really tell people how you feel, but you also should try to get them to say it, and this is how she talks to Nukumizu about it and tries to convey that advice so that, he would be able to help Komari with the struggle. Overall, Anna is a great character. She is not my favorite of the three, just because of the last few episodes, which makes it very obvious who it is. But Anna is a great character regardless. Now, Lemon is actually one of the least explored dynamics with Nukumizu, because technically she doesn't really interact that much with Nukumizu compared to the other two. But that also does not make her bad, because she has a unique way with her rejection, because she's the only one whose chances was immediately shut down, as her crush has a girlfriend already. And yes, that is the same case with Anna. It was also revealed not because Lemon confessed, but because the literature club member did assume that they were dating, and then Mitsuki revealed it, and then crushed her hopes entirely. And what I think makes Lemon very interesting is her conflict between her and Asagamo, and how she doesn't want to be the reason that Mitsuki breaks up with Asagamo, but also that deep down she still is trying to be with Mitsuki, but she knows how wrong that is. And you can see that conflict happen as she kind of also mentions this to Nukumizu and cries over the fact that she may be the reason eventually that they break up. And Asagamo, you can also see that she doesn't want Mitsuki to get too close to Lemon, because he worries that he may be cheating on her with Lemon. And she also mentions that she feels wrong about dating him if he truly was into Lemon. And another thing that makes Lemon unique is that she's the only one of the three whose crush actually liked her back previously. And she is the only one of the three that her arc has concluded in a very good note. I mean, she moves on, she gets the answer she wanted, and is even able to befriend and become close to Asagamo and talk to Mitsuki normally. And I think that's a great way to highlight the different aspects of moving on and rejection, because you have Lemon who highlights the positive end and positive note of it, while you have characters where we'll explore in a second Komari and her way of getting to Komari and her arc. I really like when stories do these kind of like different aspects of a theme and highlighting it in different spectrums. A good analogy is the video I made on Mahito, where him and Yuji kind of basically explore a very similar theme, although in very different spectrums, where it highlights very different layers of like the one thing. I don't want to get too into detail on that because that's not what the video is about. Now, Komari is an interesting case to me, as I usually never have these kind of characters as a favorite, but the way Komari is written and the way her arc is like makes me just love her a lot. I mean, I don't tend to like these kind of characters that much, but the way Komari's personality is presented and how she acts makes her extremely fun to watch and reminds me of the way Bocchi is, although on a much less exaggerated note. And I think she has the best dynamic with Nukumizu, as well as the best interactions, as I really think how I describe their dynamic is more of a siblings bond. And I think that really is highlighted in how Nukumizu himself suggests that notion when they were eating the spicy noodles or whatever on a festival or something. I kind of just am blanking out on that. And I think I would say that her confession is probably the most powerful of the three, because of how much it means to Komari, because the reason why she likes him so much is because he is giving her attention. We see that later on how Komari fears being left behind and wants a desire to be needed, to be dependent on, and that is why we see her trying to be so desperate in being the president and being independent, even though you can clearly see she does not want to do this. It is an interesting and unique take on independence, as this is a case where independence is not the answer, not because she should be dependent, because that is not the problem with Komari, and also this is not what Komari wants to do. The main thing with Komari is that she does not want to be left behind and she wants to have people around her, and that independence is not the goal for her character. It's a means to not rely on others, so she would not suffer in the inevitable end of having everybody leave her behind. And I think that in of itself is a very great way to encapsulate what the story is about. The idea that relationships are always going to be short term, especially in high school and all the like. As I'm sure a lot of people have experienced this, whether you've had a romantic or platonic relationship with a bunch of friends, I'm sure there are a bunch of them that have just kind of slowly faded away as you've graduated and separated your ways. There are probably a couple that you've kept in touch with, and those are the long-term ones. And I think this story does emphasize on this, and especially in the beginning and the last episode. And there is an interesting theme in the lonely versus the loner in Komari no Komizu, as opposed to Nukumizu, and how I explained that Nukumizu is a loner in how he is alone, but that is by choice because he just prefers to be alone, whereas Komari is lonely not by choice and does not want to be alone, and the whole reasonings and motivations behind her actions is to not be lonely. And the theme of moving on is presented so perfectly with Komari, as that she knows that it is painful to hold on to those feelings for the president and just wait for them to slowly fade away, but she still wants to hold on to them and attempts to move on by asking Shintaro if he ever liked her. Essentially the same thing that Lemon tried, but she never really got the answer. But as she does highlight, she was ready to just throw everything away just to be with Shintaro. She was prepared to just drop all these relationships she's had with the two of them and just ready to solely focus on Shintaro, aka the president. And what I think makes Komari's conflict so unique out of the main three is that it isn't just focusing on the romantic aspect of it, but it also is in the sadness and how she can't be with Tsukinoki and Shintaro because they are dating and it would be awkward. So not only is it just because she got rejected, but she also wishes that she could still hang out and be with them, and realizes that maybe she shouldn't have confessed because this wouldn't be the case otherwise. But regardless, she does not regret liking the president. And I really think there's just something interesting and great about that. But what she doesn't realize, and over the course of the story and how Nukumizu tries to tell her, is that everybody around her is trying to give her a place to belong and want to support her in her endeavors, as we see that they help her out, trying to set up that festival when she was sick, despite the fact that she constantly tries to overwork due to her fears. And I think there is a small scene that really encapsulates the entirety of Komari's character, and that is the fact that when her seniors, aka Tsukinoki and Shintaro, suggest that they want Komari to get stronger, Nukumizu says she is a little stronger. And it's an emphasis on the little and how it is actually realistic and great, because it is not about the fact that she has to be strong right now and just suddenly be a perfect extrovert that can just talk to anybody. It is a step-by-step process, and the fact that she's improving is good enough. And it's the idea that she's trying to force herself to be the perfect extrovert or be the perfect speaker, and that's not the answer right now because she's just kind of forcing it, and that's not what she wants, and she's only doing it because she doesn't want to depend on friends because she thinks that they'll just leave her anyways. It's so I really like the meeting, as she isn't magically able to communicate, and it is not a scene where all of a sudden this is the big moment where she's able to do everything, and it is not a Ichikawa graduation speech if you've seen Dangerous in My Heart, because that's not what this is about. She just cannot do it because clearly she's not ready, she's not capable, and she's just forcing herself to do this, yet it just kind of backfires, and Nukumizu just has to end up doing it for her, and that as well is flawed. I mean, that can technically be viewed as selfish and irresponsible because he's walking over Komari's motivations, and we see in how she gets extremely upset at that, and neither of them are in the right and neither of them are in the wrong. And it's just a very complicated situation for the two. Why be friends if she's gonna be left behind? That is something that basically terrifies Komari. I mean, it's basically what motivates her throughout the entire story. But what she doesn't realize is that the people around her will always be there for her. I mean, she has Lemon, Anna, and Nukumizu, and even he emphasized that he will always be with her. But as Nukumizu does say in the episode, these relationships probably are going to be short-term. If they're not, great. She will have friends that she will probably know for the rest of her life if they are long-term friends. But there could also be the chance that they are just going to be short-term, and that's completely fine. She can just still enjoy it in the moment and worry about the future later. There's a lot of room for growth in Komari, and that's completely fine. And it is fine to rely on people like Nukumizu to help grow more and more and more. Honestly, Komari does look like a character I would definitely want to make a video on at some point, like a full unscripted video. I really think I could if season 2 does actually happen. But yeah, regardless, I really just love this show, and I think Komari's character arc really did elevate it and surpass Shoshamin series, because I do think that series was also just an amazing show, which unfortunately was not really talked about as much as, you know, Losing Heroines. But regardless, that is what it is. I mean, I really like the show overall. It has a lot of interesting things to say, and it's a very unique show overall, and even apart from the characterizations and depth it has for the characters, it is overall a fun watch with a lot of the hijinks that the characters go to, a lot of the craziness. I mean, you have the teachers who are just peeping on them and being very weird, and you have the other teacher who's just kind of constantly complaining that she doesn't have a husband or whatnot. It's a lot of craziness in that school. I don't even know if it functions properly and whatnot. But yeah, that's gonna wrap up today's video. I hope you do enjoy. We're trying to get the 1K by the end of the year. So if you enjoy the video, you know, drop a like, subscribe, let me know what you think. If you are interested in any more of these videos, you can suggest series you want me to watch, read, or play. I don't know if I can guarantee that they would make it, as I would probably only make these videos if I have enough to say to make a video as long as like 10-20 minutes at least. But yeah, this is gonna be Joe signing out, and I will be catching you in the next one.